Everybody, this is Perch, and this is a review of Jerry Duggan's Iron Man #1. And Iron Man as a title is one that I think's had a kind of a rough run of it for a while. Warren Ellis had a run, Matt Fraction had a run. I know I'm forgetting some other people in there. Brian Michael Bendis, of course, had a run. There's been several different attempts at Iron Man. We saw Dan Slott, we saw Christopher Cantwell recently. Both kind of take a run at this book. And the challenge with Iron Man, I think, at what comes through when you read these stories, is that there's a lot of attention that's paid to Captain America of having, there's it's hard to write Captain America. He's just there's nothing to him. He's red, white, and blue, and he's patriot, and I don't know where do you go with it? And it's like, I know, what if he was a patriot, but he was having doubts about America, and they're like, that's our angle, and that's kind of what they've slipped in with Captain America. With Iron Man, I'd say we have just as bad a problem, if not worse, because over kind of the course of this entire kind of sequence of events, Iron Man pretty much is defined as he's rich and he partied too much and he's arrogant, but he's smart and he's trying to be humble. But sometimes he's smart, and you kind of just go in circles with that. The Cantwell run wound up being a lot of kind of just Tony faces hubris. And the Dan Slott run was Tony faces his hubris and his mortality. And the Brian Michael Bendis run was, let's introduce Riri, and Tony is arrogant. I mean, it's there becomes a sameness, and I often feel like this then feeds the next phase of this evolution, where people say, well, yeah, this is why we have to invent a Riri, or why we have to pass the baton, because there's just no stories we can tell with these people. Yeah, we know it's the same old stuff, but there's literally nothing more we can do. So if you don't, you're complaining about the same old stuff, but then you don't like it when we completely change the character, and as if there's only two choices. And with Iron Man, I think there's lots of ways you could make it interesting. I think you could point to the movies, but that's actually not kind of as good a reference as you think, because the movies only had to fill what, 6 total films, 3 Iron Man films and 4 Avengers films. That's 7, counting Endgame and Infinity War is the same. But regardless, you're only having to fill in total with Tony Stark there 3 hours of screen time, because when you take out all the other characters, I don't know. I mean, you're not filling that much space, and you're doing kind of a greatest hits of Tony. You're going to do Demon in the Bottle. You're going to do he's got to rebuild himself from his tech and all the rest. But with comics, and when you're on issue 580, it's you've told that story a few hundred times by now, and so to this comic in question, out the gate, look, the art's good. I think the art's reasonable. I think they're doing that thing where the coloring is overtaking the pencils at times, and I'm not always a fan of that. But the art's fine. It's solid. The writing is, a bunch of people are going to jump all over Jerry Duggan. The writing is fine. It's not that the writing is terrible. There definitely are some weird kind of eye-rolling moments, and there's stuff where it feels like the writer's trying to, I understand the kids. I do. Look, I slipped in an Uber reference. Kids like Uber. There's a handful of those. I mean, there's and it always feels a little jarring, because when the rest of the writing is telling, I mean, most of the story is told in kind of this, this narrative that Tony is writing an autobiography, or kind of writing his story. And he's like, I used to be this, but now I'm not. And I used to be rich, but now I'm not. And I used to drink, but now I don't. And I used to be really popular, but now I'm not. And it's kind of this, it's intended to be, monotonously depressing. And it may be the intention of the writer, and if so, he does a good job. But in reading through it, it's insufferable. You don't like Tony. When you read this stuff, you're not like, oh, here's a man who's about to hit rock bottom, and we're going to root for him to come back up again. He's unlikable, and he's written as unlikable. Whether that's the intention of the writer or not is a little hard to say, but he is, even when he's having a lot of self-reflection, it's it's annoying self-reflection. It's not, you do not want this character. You want this character to kind of move off the page, and you want to get something else very quickly. Where's Hellcat when we need her? But anyway, um, the comic is basically sets up the story, a lot of the story of establishing Tony's status quo. He used to have a bunch of things, but now he doesn't. He's down to kind of just a little bit of money. We're supposed to feel bad about this, but at different times in the comic, Tony Stark's like, well, what happens if you need more money? And Tony's like, I'll just invent something. There's no tension to the situation that he's being put in. It's he's he's basically like, get myself out of this. And again, it's early in the run. It's only the first issue, so some of this could be intentional. At the end of the comic, I'm hopping around here, and yes, spoilers. It's like, oh no, he appears drunk. Now he's clearly hasn't been drinking, or at least if he did, it was off panel. We didn't see it, but he had a blackout. Woke up in a bathroom. Goes out to the sidewalk, vomits, and it's like, kind of, oh, he's drunk, and he gets captured on social media, being that way. And the problem is we've seen that story before too. And not just once, we've seen that multiple times. If it's true that, hey, some supervillain is manipulating Tony, getting into his head, making him, feel drunk even though he's not drunk, it's, that was in Avengers Disassembled by Bendis. That was briefly touched on in Matt Fraction's run. That's been done before. And so perhaps the story about, well, he can always just invent something to get him out of trouble is going to be, sidetracked by the fact that, hey, oh no, but if he's drunk, he's too dumb to invent anything, and then he can't get himself into trouble, and now what does he do? And that could very well be where they're going. If they are, again, the problem is you have to suspend a lot of disbelief. And in the comic, we see Rhodey, and we see Riri, and we see Captain America, at his bedside at one point. And you're like, well, if he hits rock bottom, then he'll just, hop into his Avengers suit, or, call his buddy over at S.H.I.E.L.D. and be like, hey, can you give me a ride to the giant Celestial we're all living in the Avengers mansion? I'll just hang out there. Again, it's possible that Duggan is going to take us through a long arc of, you're unstable, Tony, we're kicking you out of the Avengers. But if they do that, again, does that make any sense to the characters? So Captain America, who is, had his kind of entire personality taken over by a Hydra agent and has been a wolf and been a junkie at different times, he's going to be like, I know you've been my friend for like 40 years, Stark, but I don't know, you seem like you're acting erratically all of a sudden in a completely different way than all the other erratic ways you've been acting, so we're just going to say, fuck it, you're on your own and you could live on the streets. Or Tony's like, I'm too proud to take your help anyway. I mean, like, it just, you're tired thinking about that. And so the series promises that it's going to take Tony Stark to new levels of rock bottom. Again, the challenge is Dan Slott's run had him, he was dead during parts of that run. He was an LMD. Bendis killed him. Cantwell took him to rock bottom. Like he's had rock bottom a lot. So the idea is like, but this is the rockiest of the rock bottoms. We're gonna go to a new rock bottom. Is that the best Iron Man story you can tell? The comic also does some other things. It features the third Marvel superhero. Apparently, Marvel hates New York at this point. They or kind of hates cities. I don't know. Spider-Man has a big mystery. What's going on? With some big explosion or some disaster he caused, and everybody's, pissy at him. By the way, the everybody's pissy at him, kind of, editors and writers mildly attempted to do that for like a couple months, but it's barely even hanging on in his own book. In Dark Web, you don't get, all the heroes are working like, hey, it's Spidey, all right, cool, let's help you. Like nobody is pissy about it now. He was in the Monica Rambeau book, and everything's fine. So anyway, is that a thing? I don't know. The Fantastic Four blew up their building, and the city hates them for it. And in this comic, some villain who's trying to frame Tony for being responsible blows up his little brownstone that he has in New York. So, I mean, all of these comics, this is 3 number one comics Marvel has put out. In every single one, there's major property damage and the hero's somewhat responsible. And in this story, in this comic, we get lots of people, lots of New Yorkers coming up to Tony and be like, "You suck! You litter! I hate you!" Which again, we, 2 months ago, less, Tony Stark both put the world in jeopardy by making a Celestial and then saved the world with the Avengers. I mean, it is unlikely on both fronts that New Yorkers would have this kind of reaction to Iron Man or any of the superheroes. The superheroes have saved their lives. They wouldn't be necessarily running around grateful. They'd probably be running around terrified because villains attack superheroes all the time. So when they see Iron Man, it's like, oh, cool. A little bit of danger here, taking a selfie with you, but hey, here's somebody fly around. That's pretty cool. If people are going to idolize some of the idiots on Twitter, if Sean King still has people who like him, then I'm having a hard time believing that everywhere Iron Man goes, people are, and it's not just that they don't like him; they're dismissive in how they don't like him. Tony Stark is sitting in the rubble of his house that he blew up, and or got blown up, and he's eating Chinese because oh so funny, and a guy like walks by like, "Hey, you dumb litterer," and it's just really, I don't know. It is the level of disdain and mocking for the heroes. It doesn't sell well. So and by the way, if you're a comic writer and you're like, I wonder why the fans think that I'm dismissive and don't take these characters seriously. I mean, you read these books and it's like, I'm going to deconstruct the hero and take him down to rock bottom and then have a bunch of the other New Yorkers clown on him all the time. I mean, like, it's not the weirdest thing for somebody who reads this comic to think, man, this writer really hates the shit out of this character. Now, of course, this is all a story. It's a story that will ultimately be Tony Stark hits rock bottom. He builds himself back up to be as heroic as ever. That is the story. And that's the story. This comic is not going to end with Tony Stark just hitting rock bottom and freezing to death in an alley. And then, there's a little tribute to Tony Stark and the ghost of Stan Lee shows up and like, hey, true believers, well, that's the end of Tony Stark's tale. Thanks for reading all these years. Bye. This is going to lead to redemption. The problem is, if you deconstruct and deconstruct and deconstruct and hit rock bottom after rock bottom, eventually people don't care about the recovery. They know the recovery is temporary. They know it's just until the new writer comes along and relaunches the book again that we're going to get, the redemption arc. We're going to get it all over again. So, the recovery feels hollow. The rock bottom feels hollow. The challenge you have right now, and I think in this comic, is it's written for you to go on this journey to Tony Stark failing and being in bad shape. But even inside the comic, when Tony's like, nah, I'll just invent something and get some more cash, that's meant to be kind of the voice of the reader saying, oh, Tony Stark always gets himself in these situations, but this time will be different. Except it won't be. Right now, Tony Stark, Iron Man, is running around in the Avengers, fighting the multiverse of evil. Tony Stark will show up in other comics, just kind of farting around, being himself. It's not going to carry through. So there is no gravity to this situation because the situation feels temporary at best, because it is. If you think about comics in a bigger scale, if you think about comics in terms of decades, we'll be past this before you know it. And so, therefore, if your goal is to get us to feel real danger here, you gotta bring something different. You certainly have to bring something new, and you have to bring something that the readers are going to believe in. The last other piece is in terms of the telling the reader what to do rather than showing them. Riri may be a great character. There may be some amazing ways that we could use her, and she has this Disney Plus show coming out, so Disney's certainly going to want to do something with her to kind of build up her presence and all the rest. But you have to show these moments. Riri is promised in issue 2 of having a secret. Tony's got to learn something about her that he didn't know, and who knows what that is. It feels like it's going to be something along the lines of she has a failsafe somewhere that keeps tabs on him because she believes he's erratic and doesn't take care of himself. Like it's gonna be one of those like ego crushing things he's going to learn. It's not going to be that she's actually going to become a supervillain and be the new Mandarin, which would be truly a surprise and interesting. No, I'm not one of the people that says all the new legacy characters have to be villains, but if you made one of them a villain, it sure would be a shocking surprise, and that's kind of what sells comics, is shocking surprise, but whatever. But in this first issue of Iron Man, we get tons of scenes of Tony Stark basically going, Riri's, I could listen to her big, beautiful brain all day. She's the smartest person, so interesting, all wonderful, and I love being around her. She is the star in my life, the shining soul of the wind beneath my wings. And you read this stuff and you're like, forget Riri. I wouldn't want this being said about Reed Richards. The mention of Reed Richards somewhere along the line, like I even suck it up and ask Reed Richards for help, even though I don't want to. It's like, wow, what a comparison. Riri, big, beautiful brain. I love listening to her just talk about anything. Technology, boys, rabbits, things she watched on YouTube. It's all great. But Reed's a dick. I don't know. Don't tell us, show us. I'm rooting for you. Everybody's gonna hear this line and not ignore the rest. I'm rooting for you to make Riri an interesting, viable, sellable character. I mean, go for it. The more, the merrier. I really want that. A lot of people want that. Even if they're bitching in the comments right now, they still want that. They still want these characters to be great. They regardless of who they are, they want to pick up a comic book and be like, "God damn, I love this character." That's what people want. You can't tell them the character is that. You have to show them the character is that. And this comic is pretty much a lot of people telling us that Iron Man sucks and his life's about to get worse, and he's erratic, and he's about to hit rock bottom, and some shadowy villain is out to crush his life, and he needs to get to the bottom of this mystery. But meanwhile, he's spiraling. And again, I mean, he is a member of the Avengers. He could call up T'Challa and be like, "Hey, you're a master spy with access to lots of technology. Seems to be some supervillain here is fucking with my life, and normally I'm too arrogant to call on you and ask for help, but recently this supervillain blew up my house and actually murdered an innocent woman. We spent a lot of time on that in the comic. This woman died being caught in the crossfire, and even though I'm a little too arrogant and I don't want to ask for help, I'd like to solve it myself. I certainly am a hero, and I don't want innocent civilians to die. So, hey, Black Panther and Captain Marvel and Captain America and Namor and all Thor, all the members of the Avengers, everybody I could count. We don't like innocent people to die, so maybe you guys can help me out here, because somebody seems to be screwing with me, and it's innocent people are getting caught in the crossfire, and because we're all heroes, we wouldn't want that. So let's figure it out together." Nah, of course not. There's my car like beeping at me like, "No, stop saying bullshit." Anyway, thanks for listening.